This program is rated PG. It contains themes and scenes which may not be suitable for very young audiences. Parental guidance is advised.
Be advised that the views and opinions of the hosts and guests do not reflect those of the station.
So, what are we really made of? Dig deep inside the atom and you'll find tiny particles held together by invisible forces. Everything is made up of tiny packets of energy born in cosmic furnaces.
The atoms that we're made of have negatively charged electrons whirling around a big bulky nucleus.
The quantum theory offers a very different explanation of our world.
The universe is made of 12 particles of matter, 4 forces of nature. The universe is made of 12 particles of matter, 4 forces of nature. That's a wonderful and significant story.
Suppose that little things behave very differently than anything big. Nothing's really as it seems. It's so wonderfully different than anything big. The world is a dynamic mess of jingling things. It's hard to believe.
The quantum theory
It's so strange and bizarre.
even Einstein couldn't get his head around it.
In the quantum world, the world of particles, nothing is certain. It's a world of probabilities.
The quantum theory offers a very different explanation of our world.
The universe is made of 12 particles of matter, 4 forces of nature. The universe is made of 12 particles of matter, 4.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Philippines Uncut. I'm your host, Buddy Conana. Now, in this show, we talk about everything in the sun, and tonight is about amazing science. In fact, we're going to be talking about several fields of science, astronomy, space, satellites, and drones. And joining us is one of the Philippines' foremost experts in all these fields, and one of only 3 Filipino astrophysicists, Dr. Rohel Maricese, and he's the program leader of the National Space Development Program. Dr. Cese, welcome to Philippines Uncut.
Good evening, buddy, and thank you for inviting me here.
A pleasure is ours. In fact, this is like a little reunion for us because
Yes.
you were on the show several years ago.
Yes, I've been here since
Yeah,
I
maybe-
think, 2012 or
Yeah,
2013.
it's been a
yes.
while, huh?
Yes.
And pleasure to have you again because so much has been happening in your field, and it's nice to have a catch up to find out what's been keeping you busy. All these, I mean, in the last 3 years since we did our last program, no? Now, for the people who are just watching this program now and seeing you on the program for the first time, a little introduction about yourself.
Actually, I'm an astrophysicist by profession. I'm one of the 3 astrophysicists in the country. And also, I used to be a professor at the University of the Philippines in Los Baños. But right now, I handle the National Space Development Program, which is a program funded by the Department of Science and Technology, wherein we try to push for the development of our own space agency and also the use of space technology for everyday lives of Filipinos.
Very well. Let's define what is an astrophysicist.
Okay, when we say, usually the confusion arises when are you an astronomer, are you an astrophysicist? In the past, usually an astronomer is someone who does the observation itself using telescopes. So they do the hard manual labor of staying up late at night, observing the stars. And then in recent times, the field of astrophysics suddenly boomed, especially in the early 20th century, wherein we tried not just to observe what is happening, but we try to understand how do these things or why do these things happen. And nowadays, an astronomer, astrophysicist, more or less it's almost the same thing now. So for us, we study the nature of the universe, like how do stars form and why do they form? What causes stars to form? What causes planets to form? What causes stars to explode and things like that. So it's a very diverse field. And then I focused more on the computational astrophysics side.
That must have been an amazing experience for you, huh?
Yeah, it's very good.
To be there, and Japan is one of the leaders in the space technology, right?
True.
And wow,
being at the center of everything makes it really you imbibe the culture, you imbibe also the mentality of how to develop or how to study or how to learn science.
Have you always been into? I mean, I'm sure you must have been into science even as a young child, a young boy. I'm sure. I mean, this is not something you just woke up one day. Hey, I want to become an astrophysicist.
Yeah. Actually, as early as 5 years old, I already knew that my field is going to be in space. It's a foregone conclusion for me that space is going to be my field. Even though I had a lot of exposure in the other fields, like my mother is actually a biologist. And as early as 8 years old, she was teaching me how to use microscope. At 11 years old, how to splice DNA and everything. But it never got me interested. It was really space. And eventually, when I went to high school, physics, it's my first love, essentially.
Wow. No, and I think this country definitely needs more scientists.
Yes, that's true.
And which leads me to my next question. You are very much involved with the Department of Science and Technology.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
What would you say is describe the state of science in the country, science development, science awareness?
Actually, in terms of science awareness, comparing ourselves to other countries, we're a little bit behind, especially in terms of the number of researches, the amount of researches that we are doing. Although we're trying to catch up, but given that we have very limited resources, we spend very small amount of our national budget on science research and development. It makes it a little bit hard to do. So we try to make do with what we can. But given the appropriate funding and the appropriate support from the government, all our scientists from all different fields, whether it's physics, biology, chemistry, we can do a lot more compared to what we are doing right now.
Yes, some people have been on the show are members of this, the Inventor Society in the Philippines. And, when they're on the show, I was actually amazed that the dynamic group of people, and they have, inventions that are lauded overseas and, great stuff. They make great stuff. And yet in their own country, there seems to be little focus, little attention being paid on them. Now, my question is, why do you think awareness or it seems to be, science doesn't seem to be on the radar screen of most people here, especially our decision makers, the people in power.
True.
Why is that?
Siguro, it comes from the lack of awareness comes from the hesitation. When we were children, we didn't want to study about science. We didn't like mathematics or things like that.
Well, let's put it this way. I don't think, I wouldn't say no one really did, but let's say it was just a small group, perhaps, a clique that really liked it. No?
Yes, exactly. And usually these are the groups that sometimes the other students would call nerds or geeks and things like that.
Mundo.
So that means it's because they see science as something that is very complex or very complicated and hard to study. But in reality, science is not about the knowledge, but it's a way of thinking on how you analyze the world around you. You try to analyze the things in a very systematic manner.
Scientific method.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So once you you imbibe that kind of learning, that kind of thinking, everything else becomes sort of like, it opens up a whole new universe.
And I guess there lies, because as a student, you probably wonder in high school, you probably wonder, why am I studying chemistry, whatever, no? I mean, what bearing will it have in my life? I I want to become a lawyer, whatever, no? And I guess exactly what you said, it's actually not really studying the science, but training your mind to think, operate in a certain way.
That's the main reason why a lot of students don't like physics. Because in physics, you're trained to analyze.
Guilty as charged.
I think it's that the awareness of what is the value of science to us and what science can bring us. A lot of us don't even know that most of the technologies that we use nowadays came from the very basic research, like the study of when Heinrich Hertz was studying about trying to make sparks that produce radio waves, no one even knew that it's going to be used to transmit television signals.
Yes, yes.
So it's in our education in our educational system right now. Students are not made aware of what why do you need to study this, and where does this lead to. So it's that lack of follow through on why this
making
is
it relevant,
making it relevant to society, making it relevant on a, sometimes you need to go on the personal level how to make it relevant. So even for space technology, like for example, if you have a smartphone and you try to use some navigation software or a navigation app to find out where you are, most people don't realize that you're actually using satellites because you're receiving signals from GPS.
Absolutely. They just use it, but they don't understand how it actually works.
Yes, exactly. No? But then in order for you to use that, there has to be someone who needs to understand it and make it happen. And that's the
people behind the scenes.
Yes.
No? Okay, before we jump into space, let's talk about this new administration. You know, a few weeks ago we inaugurated our new president, and you know we have a new administration. With new administrations usually come hope and aspiration and things like that. Now, has this administration made any statements that are that are pleasing people like you, scientists, seeing that a greater focus perhaps on the sciences, because past administrations have been kind of not really focusing on science, eh?
Well, actually, for right now, I think under the Department of Science and Technology, they're still trying to craft what's going to be the science and research, science and technology agenda for the next 6 years. But based on the pronouncement of the current administration, I think scientists such as myself and others, we need to become more open to society. We need to show what our research or what the things that we do and how this can benefit to society, because that's one of the best way to gain support for science, technology, research and development.
Absolutely. You know, Dr. Cese, as a layperson looking at this, in the media, and we look at things, we look at situations, and we try to connect the dots and things like that. And there is absolutely a disconnect between you guys in the white lab coats and
I don't wear white lab coats.
No, I mean you scientists and the private sector. Now, if only we can somehow bridge that gap, then I would think you guys should even benefit by way of funding.
Exactly.
Right? I mean,
and
get
at the
sponsors.
same time, we contribute something to society.
Absolutely.
So it's a give and take. But then, as you said, there's a disconnect because basically one side is not talking to the other.
Yes.
At some point, you have to break that. So personally, I think it's the responsibility of the scientists to break that disconnect, to bridge that disconnect, so that we try to let scientists should reach out and say, these are our capabilities. What can we do for you? Because basically, when we talk about science research and development here, we're using public funds. So that means the public should benefit from it.
Well, I hope the government sits up and takes notice, because if there is a good bridge between the two, I mean, the government should provide a platform, no?
So far for the past, because I've been listening to a lot of press release, pronouncement by different secretaries, not just with science and technology, but also in other fields like agriculture. I think they have a clear knowledge of, or they have a clear idea of what it can bring. It's just a matter of how can we bring it to, let's say, to the other parts of society, like in the provinces. How can this contribute to economic growth, not just in urban areas like Manila, Cebu, or Davao, but also benefit a greater slice of the Philippine society.
Very good, very inspiring. Okay, let's talk about space. Now, you are the program leader of the National Space Development Program.
Yes.
Very impressive, very grandiose sounding, huh?
Yes.
Very first world sounding.
Yes, that's true.
So quickly, tell us, what is the National Space Development Program?
So the National Space Development Program, this is under the Department of Science and Technology, specifically the Philippine Council for Industry, Energy, and Emerging Technology Research and Developments. Because for the past few years, even the previous administration, there has been a push for space, the use of space for our own benefit. So that's why I think a couple of months ago we saw the launch of the Diwata 1 microsatellite, which is the very first microsatellite that the Philippines created.
Microsatellite.
Yes.
What is a microsatellite?
When you say microsatellites, it's anywhere between 10 kilograms to 100 kilograms.
Okay.
So the Diwata 1 microsatellite is a 50 kilogram satellite. So, and that was purely funded by the Philippine government. I mean, we invested in that satellite. But then it's not just that. We need to show that any space technology or space development that we are going to invest in should have a benefit, as I said, to society. So under the National Space Development Program, our task is essentially to lay the groundwork of essentially a space program of the Philippines for the next 10 years. Because when we talk about space, it's a long-term plan. It's not something like, okay, let's plan today,
Sure,
then we can have it tomorrow or the next year.
Absolutely.
So, because, for example, when you try to make satellite, it takes years to do that. And by the time you make it, the new technology comes in. So you have to be ahead of the game. So we try to craft out the various roadmaps. What's the research and development agenda? We even had the space policy. How can
we have a space policy?
Yes, we have the draft. We have the draft of the space policy.
Bravo.
And even the draft of the space program, the space agency essentially. What's the structure of the space agency?
How far into the program? I mean, how far is the development of this program already? I mean, are you nearing completion? Is it almost ready for rollout? Or I mean, just the plan itself, though.
In terms of the planning, we're expected to finish some before the year ends.
Wow, nice.
So
Good.
that means it's up to our legislators to legislate the space agency, because we need
provide
a law.
funding.
Yes, and we need a law to create the space agency
and to get the funding
and everything. So we have the drafts of that. We have the draft even of the Republic Act, because there has been there was a House bill before for space agency way back in 2012.
In the region, are there any other countries near us who have a space program? I mean, Japan has, I'm sure. China, the big ones have. The rich countries.
Okay, let's not talk about the major players.
Sure.
Okay,
let's talk ASEAN.
Within ASEAN, actually, we're very much behind in terms of other countries. We're I think, number 7 out of the 10 ASEAN nations.
Who's behind us?
Cambodia, Myanmar, and Brunei.
Wow.
Okay, so that speaks volumes.
Yeah.
Because we're the only major ASEAN country that we do not have our own space program, we do not have our own space agency, we do not have our own satellite. Well, not right now we have one, which is the
microsatellite.
Yes.
But interestingly, we're number 7 out of 10, considering that we are one of the most populous countries in ASEAN. And the ones behind us are actually the ones with some of the least, the smallest populations. You said Brunei,
Cambodia and Myanmar.
Oh.
Before we were number 6.
We've even
but
fallen.
last November, Laos launched its telecommunications satellite, which is much bigger and much more capability. So that's why we slid a little bit back.
Dr. Cesar, we have pause for break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the relevance of science to the Filipinos, to our country, to our situation, and we're going to talk about the astronomy and other related space issues.
Okay.
So guys, stick around because more of Amazing Science when Philippines Uncut returns.
The atoms that we're made of have negatively charged electrons whirling around a big bulky nucleus.
The quantum theory offers a very different explanation of our world.
The universe is made of 12 particles of matter, 4 forces of nature. The universe is made of 12 particles of matter, 4 forces of nature. That's a wonderful and significant story.
Suppose that little thing
offers a very different explanation of our world.
The universe is made of 12 particles of matter, 4 forces of nature. The universe is made of 12 particles of matter.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Philippines Uncut. I'm your host, Buddy Conana. Now, on this show, we talk about everything in the sun, and tonight is about amazing science. In fact, we're going to be talking about several fields of science, astronomy, space, satellites, and drones. And joining us is one of the Philippines' foremost experts in all these fields, and one of only three.
So, what are we really made of? Dig deep inside the atom and you'll find tiny particles held together by invisible forces. Everything is made up of tiny packets of energy born in cosmic furnaces.
This program is rated PG. It contains themes and scenes which may not be suitable for very young audiences. Parental guidance is advised.
Be advised that the views and opinions of the hosts and guests do not reflect those of the station.
Behaved very differently than anything big. Nothing's really as it seems. It's so wonderfully different than anything big. The world is a dynamic mess of jingling things. It's hard to believe.
The quantum theory is so strange and bizarre. Even Einstein couldn't get his head around it.
In the quantum world, the world of particles, nothing is certain. It's a world